My husband's family tradition is going to ruin our son's life. I was 8 months pregnant when my mother-in-law showed up at my house with a lawyer and a stack of documents trying to legally force me to name my unborn son Nimrod. I'd known this was coming. My husband's family had a tradition where the firstborn son in every generation for the past 400 years was named Nimrod. They even had this massive family tree in their living room with every single Nimrod going back to like the 1600s. My husband was the second son, so he got to be named Blake, which was basically winning the lottery. His older brother got stuck with Nimrod and now goes by Rod, which isn't much better, but at least people don't immediately assume his parents hate him. When I got pregnant, his family was so excited that the tradition could continue since Rod only had daughters. My father-in-law stood up with champagne and said, "To baby Nimrod," and I laughed because obviously that was a joke, but nobody else was laughing. That night I told Blake there was absolutely no way I was naming our son Nimrod. He agreed immediately and said he'd always hated the tradition and thought it was cruel to saddle a kid with that name in modern times. We decided we'd name him Charlie and just deal with his parents being upset. We thought that would be the end of it. We were so wrong. My in-laws started a full pressure campaign. They showed up at our house every single day with new reasons why we had to use the name. My father-in-law kept going on about how Nimrod was a mighty hunter in the Bible and that it was a name of strength and power, completely ignoring that nowadays everyone just thinks it means idiot. They bought hundreds of dollars worth of baby clothes and blankets and toys all monogrammed with Nimrod on them. They ordered a custom crib with Nimrod carved into the headboard. They redid their guest room as a nursery for when we'd visit and painted Nimrod's room on the door. My father-in-law sat me down and explained that he'd already added our son's name to the family trust, and legally it had to be Nimrod to qualify for inheritance. Blake's entire extended family got involved. His aunts and uncles called us constantly. His grandfather, another Nimrod, flew in from Florida to personally guilt trip us. They had a family meeting where everyone took turns explaining why the name was important and how we'd be destroying 400 years of tradition if we changed it. Blake's brother Nimrod even showed up and said, "Look, it sucked for me, but you get used to it and it's part of who we are." I pointed out that he literally goes by a different name and he said that was beside the point. Blake started to crack under the pressure. After weeks of constant harassment, he started saying things like, maybe we could use it as a middle name, or what if we spelled it differently? I told him that no variation of Nimrod was acceptable, and he got defensive, saying I didn't understand what it meant to his family. His parents started dangling money in front of us. They'd pay for the baby's college education. They'd give us a down payment on a bigger house. They'd set up a trust fund, but only if we used the name. Blake started looking at houses online and talking about how nice it would be to not worry about money. He started having daily phone calls with his parents that he'd taken another room. He'd come out looking stressed and wouldn't tell me what they talked about. He started saying things like, maybe we're being too stubborn about this, and it's just a name. It doesn't define who he is. I reminded him that he literally said he was grateful every day that he wasn't the firstborn and didn't have to be named Nimrod. He said that was different. When I was 8.5 months pregnant, his parents showed up with a lawyer. They sat us down and presented documents they'd drawn up. They wanted us to sign a legally binding agreement that we'd name the baby Nimrod in exchange for $200,000 and a guaranteed inheritance. The lawyer explained that if we didn't sign, we'd be removed from the will entirely and cut off from the family. Blake looked at the papers and I could see him actually considering it. I stood up and told them to get out of my house. My mother-in-law started sobbing. My father-in-law said, "You're making a huge mistake." Blake didn't say anything. After they left, Blake and I had the biggest fight we'd ever had. He said I was being unreasonable and that $200,000 would change our lives. I said our son's happiness was more important than money. He said the name wasn't that bad and kids get bullied for all kinds of things. I said yes, but most parents don't deliberately choose to make their kid a target. We didn't speak for 2 days. Then I went into labor. Blake drove me to the hospital and the whole way there he kept saying, "We'll figure out the name, don't worry about it right now." Something went wrong during delivery. I started bleeding really badly and the doctors were yelling about hemorrhaging and the room filled with people. The last thing I remember was a nurse saying they needed to do an emergency transfusion. When I woke up 12 hours later, Blake was sitting next to the bed holding our son. He was crying. He handed me the birth certificate and whispered, "I'm so sorry." The name on it was. Full story on the channel below.